Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining this invigorating roundtable discussion centered on one of cinema's pivotal figures, Alfred Hitchcock. Today, we'll explore not only his legendary techniques, but his influence, controversies, and the indelible mark he's left on film history.
Indeed, Hitchcock's oeuvre is a masterclass in cinematic language, an endless source of study for filmmakers and enthusiasts alike.
His understanding of the human psyche has always fascinated me. How he ensnares audiences into a web of suspense is remarkable.
There's no disputing his impact, though I look forward to examining the wider historical canvas he fits into.
While Hitchcock's contributions are celebrated, dissecting his methods paves the way for a richer perspective on narrative evolution.
Absolutely. It's essential to scrutinize the portrayal of characters and social dynamics within his films, which often mirror and inform the zeitgeist.
Well put. Hitchcock has been both lauded and antiqued, and through today's discussion, we'll peel back the layers of his complex cinematic presence.
It goes without saying, his storytelling prowess was unique, but it will be interesting to dissect whether his acclaim is entwined with nostalgia or true innovation.
True. Nostalgia can color our perception of his work, but there's no denying the ingenuity behind it.
His films were revolutionary, introducing many to cinematic suspense. But let's probe beyond the surface of this innovation.
I'll reserve my judgment on whether it was innovation or clever repackaging until all facts are laid bare today.
Oh, there's a trove to unpack there. But we must also assess his influence on contemporary cinema, which carries his DNA in various guises.
Well said, Jazz. His techniques continue to ripple through the fabric of modern filmmaking. Now, let us embark on our discussion with eager minds ready to engage the legacy of Hitchcock. As we delve into the mastery of Alfred Hitchcock, it's the evolution of his suspense techniques that first catches our eye. Amelia, you've noticed considerable development from Hitch's early works to his later films?
Definitely, Hal. Hitchcock's silent-era films like The Lodger already pulse with the tension he's famous for, but by the time we get to Vertigo or Rear Window, the suspense is drawn out meticulously. The pacing, the shot composition, it's evolved into a more sophisticated narrative dance, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, Amelia. And it's this evolution that's textbook for modern filmmakers. The lingering shots, the non-verbal storytelling, the suspenseful delays, they've been absorbed into the cinematic lexicon today. Directors draw upon what I'd call the Hitchcockian psychological buildup as a foundation for their own work.
True, Jazz, though we must consider what was happening in the world during Hitchcock's times. Post-war anxiety, the Cold War tensions, these were absorbed and refashioned into filmic suspense. Hitchcock didn't just evolve his techniques in isolation, they were very much a response to the zeitgeist.
I see your point, Mick, and it resonates. His knack for tapping into universal fears certainly amped up the tension.
I'd like to interject. While the progress in his technique is apparent, we can't dismiss that some of the early jitteriness had its own charm. The raw, almost uncultivated suspense of the 39 Steps has a different bite compared to the polished feel in North by Northwest.
Lenny, that raw vibe is exactly the kind of thing that gave Hitchcock's suspense genuine personality. It didn't need polish to be effective.
Can't deny that, Jazz. At both ends of his career spectrum, Hitch was a master. Whether refined or raw, his ability to hold an audience on the edge of their seats was unparalleled.
Exactly. Each phase of his career brought a fresh manipulation of audience expectation.
It seems that Hitchcock, much like a composer, really understood the rhythm needed to captivate his audience. Different times, different rhythms, but all unmistakably Hitchcock. The mind is a labyrinth, much like Hitchcock's storytelling. His characters often embody deeper psychoanalytical themes. Let's delve into this. Lenny, would you get us started?
Absolutely. Hitchcock wasn't just a master of suspense, he was crafting narratives around the human psyche. His characters often reflect Freudian themes. Take Spellbound, for instance. It's a treasure trove of repression and the uncanny, symbols of disturbed minds.
Oh, Spellbound, that's a prime example. And let's not forget the mother figures in Hitchcock's films. Psycho plays heavily with the Oedipal complex, a mother's overbearing presence leading to the character Norman Bates's tragic downfall. That's a great point. The psychological constructs in Hitchcock's work earn new interpretations every year. Contemporary psychology might frame these characters differently now. Still, Hitchcock's intuition about human nature feels spot on.
It's fascinating how Hitchcock seemed to predict psychological profiles that clinical psychology would flesh out decades later. It's a testament to his understanding of character.
Well, while these Freudian elements seem convincing, let's not neglect interpreting these elements from a modern perspective. Many of Freud's theories have evolved or been challenged. Hitchcock, the visionary, might not have strictly adhered to Freud. They are but inspirations.
Perfectly said. However, Hitchcock was undoubtedly inspired by these themes. Yet his portrayal is ripe for criticism. The female characters through a Freudian lens can be seen as passive, even victims of their unconscious desires.
True. Hitchcock portrayed complex emotional landscapes. Let's explore how those Freudian ideas played out through his stories. Mick?
Hitchcock was a storyteller first and foremost, using psychoanalysis as a narrative tool. It's less about Hitchcock's belief in Freud and more about creating compelling characters with inner turmoil that audiences could relate to or fear. Some say he exploited psychoanalysis, but to me, it's clever storytelling.
You raise a valid point, Mick. Hitchcock used these themes to tap into universal fears and desires. He stretched the boundaries of how characters could elicit both empathy and horror from the audience, all through the prism of psychoanalysis. And yet, we can't overlook the darker implications. Some characters seem to be haunted by their psychological conditions, pigeonholed by their pathologies. It might reflect society's understanding at the time more than Hitchcock's storytelling prowess.
Maybe so, but isn't that tension between character complexity and dated psychology what makes his films so rewatchable? We evolve, our readings of these characters evolve.
Our readings evolve, indeed. Reassessing Hitchcock's characters with new psychological insights can be revealing yet contentious. It shows both the timelessness of his stories and the dated nature of his influences.
It's that duality that sustains Hitchcock's relevance. Psychoanalytical interpretations offer layers to characters that continue to intrigue and provoke debate. Brilliant insights, everyone. Let's delve into the portrayal of women in Hitchcock's films. Izzy, would you kick us off with your perspective on this topic?
Certainly. Hitchcock's films often showcase complex female characters, yet there's a disturbing pattern of objectification and the so-called male gaze. We see women through the eyes of men, and this perspective shapes the narrative to a troubling degree.
That's a sharp observation, Izzy. While there's merit to your point, I think it's also vital to consider the era's cultural norms when these films were made. The evolving portrayal of women in his films mirrors, to some degree, the changing societal attitudes towards gender roles.
An interesting contrast, Amelia. And I'd like to add that, while there's a grain of truth in what Izzy says, it's possible to interpret some of his characters as assertive and empowered in their own right. Take Marnie, for example. She's complex, a survivor who navigates her world with a certain agency.
Mick, with respect, that's a romanticized view. The camera often lingers on women in a way that's meant to titillate the presumed male viewer. It's not just about agency, it's about who the narrative serves and why. I think Izzy makes a strong point there. We can't ignore how these depictions have ingrained certain stereotypes in cinema that we're still grappling with. Yet Hitchcock's female characters are not just objects, they're often the axis around which the tension and narrative pivot.
But let's be careful not to conflate the content of the film with the gaze of viewers. Hitchcock is making films for a broad audience. Some will see stereotype, others will see strength. It depends on the eyes of the beholder.
Lenny, we can't simply dismiss patterns of voyeurism and control as subjective interpretation. The director frames these shots and thus guides the viewer's gaze. It's a deliberate choice, one that we can critique.
Indeed, and it's also worth noting that female characters in his later films, like Tippi Hedren's roles, show an evolution in that they are more central to the narrative and have more developed backgrounds.
While true, Amelia, we have to acknowledge that character depth does not automatically absolve the films of perpetuating the male gaze. It's about looking deeper at the underlying messages.
All of these are compelling points. It's the complex interplay of Hitchcock's artistic vision and the cultural zeitgeist that fuels these ongoing debates about gender representation in his films. Now let's transition to the impact of Hitchcock on the genres of horror and thriller. His craftsmanship in these domains is simply undeniable.
It goes beyond craftsmanship, Hal. Hitchcock was a visionary. He codified a visual and narrative language. The unrelenting tension, the twist endings, that's the spine of today's horror and thriller genres.
Right. The shower scene in Psycho is a masterclass in editing and has been mimicked ad nauseum. The rapid cuts, the screeching violins, it's genius and horrific all at once.
Genius, yes, but let's not forget that cinema is an evolving art form. To give Hitchcock all the credit for modern horror seems to me an overstatement. His techniques were undoubtedly influential, but horror would have evolved one way or another.
I see where Lenny is coming from. Yet, Hitchcock's way of plumbing the depths of the human psyche, take Vertigo or Rear Window, set a high bar for psychological horror.
Intriguing points, but let's not ignore that innovative as he was, Hitchcock also built on existing techniques. German Expressionism, anyone? The chiaroscuro lighting, the distorted sets, you can see these in his visual style.
Mick, that's a valuable historical context, indeed. But doesn't it speak volumes that we're still discussing Hitchcock's influence today?
Exactly. Hitchcock didn't just use techniques, he transformed them. Take the concept of suspense itself. It was never the same after Hitchcock put his stamp on it.
And here's the rub for me. Is it transformation or merely application of his time's prevailing film language? After all, Hitchcock was an entertainer first and foremost.
Even if that were true, Lenny, his entertainment paved the way for films that aren't just about jump scares. They're psychological, they're deep, they make you think and feel. That's Hitchcock's legacy.
And let's not downplay his skill at using fear as a storytelling tool. It's equivalent to a novelist mastering the art of the cliffhanger at the end of every chapter. It's a carefully crafted mechanism.
Even so, should we consider Hitchcock the be-all and end-all of the thriller genre? I mean, look at the French New Wave. Subverting norms was their bread and butter.
All compelling observations. It seems there's a consensus that while Hitchcock's work was transformative, it's part of a larger tapestry. Let us now proceed to the impact of music and sound design on the essence of horror and suspense in Hitchcock's catalog. Let's delve into the role of music and sound design in creating the Hitchcockian tension we all feel so palpably in his films. Amelia, would you begin by discussing Hitchcock's collaboration with his composers?
Certainly. The partnership between Hitchcock and Bernard Herrmann is particularly legendary. Take Psycho, for example. The screeching strings during the shower scene have become synonymous with suspense itself.
And that scene is virtually dialogue-free, right? It's the music that conveys the terror.
Precisely. Yet, Herrmann's contribution extends beyond Psycho. His scores for Vertigo and North by Northwest are equally integral. They're not only emotive, but narratively significant.
While we laud Herrmann, we can't overlook how Hitchcock also used silence, or diegetic sounds like the footsteps in Rope, which, by the way, amplified the tension without music.
That's an excellent point, Mick. The contrast between diegetic and non-diegetic sounds is another Hitchcock staple. The Birds, with its lack of conventional score and reliance on bird sounds, created discomfort through something ordinarily benign.
And that use of sound was groundbreaking at the time, blurring the lines between the natural and the horrific.
Let's not get too carried away, though. Cinematic sound design did not spring into existence with Hitchcock.
Heated disagreements aside, Lenny, your objection is valid. One has to consider the totality of a film's elements to appreciate its sound design fully.
Indeed, music and sound are but parts of a larger whole. Yet in Hitchcock's hands, they were always so deftly utilized. Our dialogue now pivots to a favorite Hitchcockian concept, the the MacGuffin. Lenny, care to define it for us?
Certainly. The MacGuffin is typically an object or goal that the characters prioritize, but it holds little to no narrative explanation. Its significance is not in its detail, but in its ability to drive the plot forward.
It's fascinating how Hitchcock managed to make these MacGuffins so compelling, even if they ultimately didn't matter. Frankly, I think they were brilliant.
Indeed. Not only did this concept play a crucial role in Hitchcock's films, but filmmakers today still use MacGuffins to a remarkable effect. It's a testament to his influence.
Right, his influence is there, but let's not overstate it. MacGuffins, as a concept, were around long before Hitchcock. He just had the knack for popularizing them in the suspense genre.
True, but I would argue Hitchcock's use of MacGuffins transcended their mere functionality. They often held a mirror to the character's desires, fears, or obsessions.
A contextual bridge to storytelling from days yore, perhaps. The pursuit of objects with little explanation is a common thread in mythic tales and classic literature as well.
While I concede that Hitchcock did not exactly invent the MacGuffin, his unique implementation and consistent use within his storytelling lexicon definitely amplified the concept's significance.
I hesitate to elevate the concept without critiquing its relevance. Occasionally, I feel like MacGuffins can come across as a lazy plot device, if not integrated with a bit of finesse.
On that point, I must disagree, Lenny. Hitchcock's MacGuffins were anything but lazy. They're conduits for suspense and engagement. He guided audiences to question the obvious, which is quite the opposite of lazy writing.
Well, the technique demands a delicate balance, doesn't it? Without the proper setup, a MacGuffin can deflate an otherwise intriguing narrative.
Even so, I believe Hitchcock maintained that balance with great care. His films evidence much thought behind the choicest of MacGuffins to evoke the precise emotional response desired.
A stirring point. It seems Hitchcock's MacGuffins, while present to propel the narrative, indeed resonated deeply with his audiences, almost becoming characters in their own right.
Yes, and it's that emotive connection, that concern for the apparently inconsequential, that truly marks the brilliance in Hitchcock's approach to storytelling.
I admit, when you all frame it that way, perhaps there's more artistry to Hitchcock's MacGuffins than I initially credited.
Artistry, certainly. Nonetheless, I suggest we exercise caution in not crediting Hitchcock with the invention of the concept, but rather its masterful application.
An important clarification. Ingenious application can often eclipse the origin of an idea, further etching its influence into the fabric of film history. Well, let's delve into a more contentious aspect of Hitchcock's filmmaking, voyeurism. Izzy, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the ethical implications this may have on audiences and characters alike.
It's an issue that certainly rubs me the wrong way at times. Hitchcock's brand of voyeurism often objectifies and overshadows the autonomy of female characters. It's a problem, not only ethically, but narratively.
You make a fair point regarding objectification, Izzy. Yet one could argue Hitchcock was mirroring a voyeuristic society. His portrayal of characters like Norman Bates in Psycho serves as a critique of us, the viewers, implicit in the act of watching.
I agree with you on that mirroring aspect. However, we cannot overlook that voyeurism in Hitchcock's filmmaking is also a tool, a window through which we as the audience engage more intimately with the story.
If I may interject, we're leaning heavily into the ethical without considering the artistic. This confluence of voyeurism and art has been a mainstay even before Hitchcock, perhaps a necessary component for the medium.
Lenny's point is well taken, but you have to consider the broader impact. Hitchcock didn't just flirt with voyeurism, he made it an indelible part of the cinematic experience. Whether for better or worse, it's undeniably influential.
Our conversation certainly highlights the complexity of this issue. It seems Hitchcock mastered turning viewers into voyeurs while still holding up a mirror to society's own voyeuristic tendencies.
Exactly. And consider the historical and cultural underpinnings of voyeurism in Western art. From the paintings of the past peeking into private lives to Hitchcock's cinematic techniques, it's an evolving dialogue with our inherent curiosity.
This is true, but when does it become exploitative? We have to weigh these historic norms against modern sensibilities. Hitchcock played with these themes masterfully, yet the ethical ramifications are potent and relevant. I must emphasize, it's a nuanced topic. Hitchcock's legacy, when it comes to voyeurism, treads that fine line, pushing boundaries while perhaps also revealing uncomfortable truths about our nature.
Well said. Hitchcock normalized voyeurism in a way that allows us to confront and question it. By acknowledging its presence, we can navigate its ethical landscape with a more critical eye.
A spirited discussion, indeed. I think we've all shed light on various facets of this complex theme in Hitchcock's work. Let's continue to unravel these threads as we explore his use of technology next. Our next focus is on Hitchcock's relationship with technological innovations. He was quite the pioneer, wasn't he? Jazz, you've got thoughts on this?
Absolutely. Hitchcock harnessed new technologies adeptly. The dolly zoom-in vertigo is iconic. It visually manifests Scotty's acrophobia and disorientation. Innovations like that have had a lasting imprint on filmmaking.
I'll second that. Rear Window used a massive set that allowed the camera to explore the space just as James Stewart's character did. It created an immersive experience decades before virtual reality entered the lexicon.
Those are prime examples. But let's not forget that simply using new gadgets doesn't automatically yield better storytelling. It's the way Hitchcock incorporated them that was truly masterful.
Can't argue with that. He had a knack for knowing when to hold back and when to go all out. His use of matte paintings, miniature models, it was about serving the story, not just showing off.
On that note, I think it's crucial to recognize the distinction between innovation that serves a narrative purpose versus mere gimmicks. For Hitchcock, wasn't it always in service of the narrative? You hit the nail on the head, Izzy. Hitchcock never let the technology overshadow the film itself. It's a lesson many modern filmmakers could stand to learn.
I think we'd all agree then that whether deemed a gimmick or groundbreaking, there's a clear Hitchcockian touch that emerges. And it's not so much the device, but how it's applied.
True. Look at the psycho shower scene. It wasn't just about the montage technique, but also about the camera angles and the timing. Revolutionary for its time and still referenced today.
It sounds like the consensus here is that while Hitchcock indeed embraced technology, it was always his storytelling ethos that led the way. He wasn't tech-led, but tech-enabled.
Wonderfully put. His style outshone the tech itself, making the movie magic feel all the more authentic. That's the mark of a true artist.
And in that, we see his legacy, how countless films now entertain these methods, enriching narratives similarly, striving for that Hitchcockian stamp of psychological depth and visual eloquence.
We now delve into Hitchcock's unique blending of comedy with suspense. It's a craft in itself to sprinkle humor amidst tension, and Hitchcock was undeniably a master. I find it intriguing how he manages to give us a moment of relief in the midst of a tightening spiral. Thoughts?
Oh, I've got to jump in here. For me, Hitchcock's humor is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a delightful breather, but on the other hand, I feel like it occasionally deflates the suspense he's so meticulously built up.
Well, I think that's precisely the point. Hitchcock's humor isn't accidental. It's orchestrated with as much precision as his suspense, masterfully woven into the narrative to accentuate and sometimes even heighten the tension that follows.
To build on Amelia's point, there's a psychological aspect to this. It's about pacing the audience's emotional journey, like the famous auction scene in North by Northwest. It disarms you with humor right before ratcheting up the stakes.
But let's be honest, not all of those humorous attempts age well, do they? Some can seem out of place, even jarring to modern audiences.
Sure, some humor might feel dated, but let's not ignore the context of the era. What matters is the technique, and Hitchcock's approach to intersperse levity amidst dire situations is timeless.
Indeed, Hitchcock's application of humor is as much a part of his signature style as his use of the MacGuffin. Comedy is a tool, not a distraction, guiding the viewer through a roller coaster of emotion.
He had an uncanny ability to balance the elements, keeping audiences on the edge of their seats. Whether it's a quip or a quirky character, these moments are integral to the Hitchcock experience. Mick, you're right about context, and he did know his audiences. Yet I still find some of his humor undermines the narrative's suspense, like the constant bickering in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Does it serve the tension or sidetrack us?
But that's precisely the mastery we're talking about. Hitchcock uses these diversions to craft a richer, more human story. It serves the tension by breaking it, making the return to suspense all the more compelling.
Does it, Amelia? Or is it Hitchcock indulging in his own wit? Sometimes I get the impression the humor is more for him than for the narrative's sake.
That raises an interesting point about the authorial voice in storytelling. Hitchcock's personality does seep through these comic reliefs, but then isn't that part of his auteur signature that we celebrate so much?
Absolutely. It's Hitchcock's hand at play, a reminder that we're watching a crafted tale, intended not just to thrill, but to entertain comprehensively.
Exactly. And those lighthearted moments resonate with us because they're so human. We recognize ourselves in those absurdities, and it deepens our connection to the story. I concede there's truth to that. Hitchcock may juxtapose humor with horror, but it's calculated, forcing us to laugh one moment and gasp the next. And isn't that the essence of great cinema?
Well put. Hitchcock knew the human psyche, our need for release after tension, and our delight in the unexpected. It's what makes his films endure and continue to astonish us. Today we're diving into Hitchcock's adaptations of literary works. The question of fidelity to the original material versus his own cinematic vision is a complex one. Jazz, why don't you start us off on this topic?
Gladly. Hitchcock's approach to adaptations was rather radical. He wasn't afraid to deviate from the source material if it meant serving his narrative better. Take Psycho, for instance. The novel is quite graphic, yet Hitchcock's restraint makes it more psychological and suggestive.
That's a profound point, Jazz. And on the topic of adaptations, Hitchcock's films are almost a separate language, aren't they? They communicate differently across cultures, too. His translations aren't just linguistic, but cultural.
Adaptations, by their nature, are translations, not just of language, but of time and medium. And let's not forget, every viewer translates differently based on their context.
I strongly feel that this translation often left the essence of female characters in the dust, translating them into mere plot devices or eye candy.
An important critique. It does raise questions about the liberties directors should take with adaptations. Lenny, do you think Hitchcock's choices in adaptation were justified artistically?
I dare say, some of his choices were defensible, but others not so much. When he simplifies complex narratives for the sake of cinematic spectacle, it's a double-edged sword. Accessible, but sometimes at the expense of depth.
I hear what you're saying, Lenny. However, I must interject. Cinema has a different language than literature. Hitchcock mastered this language and arguably enriched the stories he told.
Excellently stated. Moreover, the very essence of Hitchcock's vision has transcended the particularities of the original material, creating something timeless.
Timeless, yes, but at times unfaithful. We can't overlook the deep changes he made to characters and plots, can we? Think about The Birds. The film holds only a semblance to Du Maurier's story.
But isn't that the point, Izzy? A true adaptation must evolve. It's not about the letter, but the spirit of the story. That's key.
This spirit versus letter debate is central to adaptations. Hitchcock, it seems, was a master spirit hunter then. As we close this segment, could each of you quickly suggest a Hitchcock film that exemplifies his approach to adaptation?
Vertigo. It's a departure from the novel D'Entre les Morts, but what it became is a testament to Hitchcock's genius.
I'd say Rear Window. It's an exercise in how to expand a simple idea into a complex, multi-layered narrative film.
Rebecca, for me. The changes he made craft a new Gothic masterpiece different from Du Maurier's original vision, yet intriguing in its own right. And I'll champion Strangers on a Train. Hitchcock takes the premise and weaves a thriller that's a breed apart from the novel.
The 39 Steps, I must argue, shows Hitchcock could take creative liberties while preserving a thrilling chase, indicative of his early British work.
Each film a case study in adaptation. Thanks everyone for this vibrant discussion. Let's move to our final thoughts. As we come to the end of our vibrant discussion, let's reflect on the insights we've uncovered. I'd like each of you to share what you're walking away with from today's roundtable.
The depth and breadth of Hitchcock's work truly came alive today, and it's clear that his influence is as palpable as ever. Lenny, your skepticism has actually reinforced my appreciation for the deliberate craft in Hitchcock's sound design. It's these granular details that, in part, have immortalized his movies.
Thank you, Amelia. Despite my critiques, I can't deny Hitchcock's crucial role in cinema. Jazz, your points on the evolution of the MacGuffin intrigued me. Even if I don't always agree, I see how Hitchcock's narrative tools have shaped storytelling far beyond his own oeuvre.
That's the beauty of such dialogues, Lenny. But speaking of impact, Mick, your historical context always brings a rich layer to these discussions. Hitchcock's work isn't just about technological feats or suspense, it's a mirror to our societal evolution.
Jazz, that's very kind. Nevertheless, Izzy, your insights on gender politics in Hitchcock's films struck a chord. We can't just view his work through rose-tinted glasses. There are problematic aspects we must confront.
I'm glad you think so, Mick. Dialogues like ours are crucial for a complete understanding of Hitchcock's legacy. It's important to challenge and critique even the figures we admire. Amelia, your perspective on literary adaptations added greatly to that nuanced understanding today.
It's a conversation I'll always welcome, Izzy. And just to wrap up my thoughts, Hal, your overarching narratives always remind us of the intricate web of history and ideas, underscoring the timeless nature of Hitchcock's influence on cinema.
I am humbled, Amelia. If I could, I'd like for each of you to conclude with one Hitchcock film that continues to resonate with you personally or professionally.
For me, Rear Window. Its play on voyeurism still challenges modern audiences.
Psycho, hands down. It's a masterclass in cinematic technique and psychological depth.
I'd have to say Vertigo. Its complex narrative and character study are unparalleled.
North by Northwest. The mix of suspense and humor is a trademark Hitchcock balance.
It's The Birds for me, so simple in concept, yet terrifyingly effective. It's that Hitchcock magic.
Those are captivating choices reflecting the varied facets of Hitchcock's mastery. Thank you all for your spirited contributions. His work indeed weaves through our cinematic and cultural fabric, reminding us that great art is never static. It evolves with each interpretation and discussion.